Let's be honest, most people won't have the courage to tell you straight up that they don't like you. Instead, they'll hide behind fake smiles, empty compliments, and forced politeness. Sound familiar? I've been there too, thinking someone was a friend, only to discover they were secretly rooting for my downfall. It's harsh, but here's the reality. If you don't learn to spot the signs, you'll waste your time and energy on people who don't truly value or understand you. So, let's cut through the nonsense and dive into the subtle signals that someone dislikes you but is trying to mask it. You might not love what you hear, but facing the truth is far better than living in denial. For example, ever notice that one person who's always joking about your flaws? They point out your quirks, mistakes, or imperfections and laugh it off with a casual, "I'm just kidding." At first, it seems harmless. But let's be real, is it really just a joke? Stick around, because we're about to unpack the truth behind these hidden red flags. Let's not kid ourselves, those so-called jokes often go far beyond playful banter. They're calculated digs, expertly cloaked in humor, designed to chip away at your self-esteem bit by bit. I remember being close to someone who always had something to say, about the way I dressed, how I spoke, even the projects I was passionate about. At first, I laughed it off, thinking it was harmless fun. But over time, a pattern emerged. The jokes always targeted my perceived weaknesses, never my strengths. Slowly, I found myself second-guessing everything, wondering if I really was the problem, if my flaws were as glaring as they made them out to be. Here's where things get controversial. People who consistently joke about your flaws aren't doing it out of affection. They're testing your limits, seeing how much disrespect you'll tolerate. It's a subtle yet insidious form of manipulation, a way for them to assert dominance while keeping you in your place. Through their words, they're sending a clear message: you're beneath me. And here's the most insidious part. They get away with it because we've been conditioned to believe that if we can't take a joke, we're the ones with the problem. But let's flip the script for a second. I'm here to tell you that there's absolutely nothing wrong with standing up for yourself when a joke crosses the line. In fact, it's essential. You deserve to be surrounded by people who lift you up, not those who tear you down just to get a cheap laugh. True friends don't need to point out your flaws to feel better about themselves. They celebrate your strengths and help you navigate your weaknesses without making you the punchline. I've seen it time and time again, people who let these jokes slide, thinking it's easier to keep the peace than to stir the pot. But here's the hard truth. Allowing others to disrespect you, even just a little, is a slippery slope. It starts with small, seemingly harmless comments, but over time, those jokes accumulate, wearing you down and making you question your worth. And the more you tolerate it, the more they'll push, until you're left doubting yourself completely. And what happens next? You end up questioning yourself, all because you didn't want to seem too sensitive. Trust me, I've learned this the hard way. I realized that by laughing along, I was giving them permission to keep pushing, to keep disrespecting me. I was complicit in my own mistreatment. It wasn't until I started pushing back, setting boundaries, that I noticed a shift. Not just in how they treated me, but in how I saw myself. I stopped letting their words define me and took back control of my own narrative. So here's my advice. the next time someone cracks a joke at your expense, don't just laugh it off. Take a moment and ask yourself, is this really funny, or is there something deeper going on here? If the answer is the latter, don't be afraid to call them out. It might feel uncomfortable, and it could even end the friendship, but your self-respect is worth far more than someone's misguided sense of humor. At the end of the day, life is too short to spend time with people who don't see your worth. If their idea of friendship revolves around constantly pointing out your flaws, it's time to find new friends, ones who genuinely care about you and lift you up, not tear you down. You'll never need to put others down to feel good about yourself. So stand tall, speak up, and never let anyone reduce you to a punchline. Now, let's talk about another red flag, backhanded compliments, the kind that sting like insults. We've all been there. Someone offers you a compliment, but instead of feeling flattered, you're left with this bitter, uneasy feeling, as if you've just been slapped with a velvet glove. It's the kind of remark that makes you pause and wonder, was that a compliment or an insult? Here's the harsh reality, it's often both. These backhanded compliments are a sneaky, subtle way for people to undermine you while pretending to be kind. I remember a time when I was working on a big project that I was incredibly proud of. After putting in countless hours of hard work, I finally shared it with a group of colleagues. One of them, someone I thought was a supporter, looked at it and said, with a smile, "Wow, this is actually pretty good, for someone like you." The compliment was wrapped in a veil of praise, but underneath, it was a jab, disguised as encouragement. It's this kind of comment that makes you question their true intentions, and it's designed to make you doubt yourself while keeping you on the defensive. Be cautious of compliments that leave you feeling worse than when you started. They may not be as friendly as they seem. I stood there, stunned. On the surface, it seemed like a compliment, but those last few words, "for someone like you," hit me like a ton of bricks. What did that even mean? Was I not supposed to be capable of doing good work? And here's the controversy, these so-called compliments are laced with a hidden agenda. They're not meant to uplift you, they're designed to keep you in your place. It's a power play, a way for the person giving the compliment to assert their superiority while making you question your own abilities. What they're really saying is, "I see you trying, but you'll never be as good as me." It's toxic, but it's wrapped up so neatly, so sweetly, that you almost miss the poison inside. Let's be real. People who dish out backhanded compliments are often the most insecure. They see your potential, your strengths, and it scares them. So they use these sly little digs to keep you second-guessing yourself, to make sure you don't rise too high. It's like they're patting you on the back while holding you down with the other hand, pretending to support you while subtly keeping you under their thumb. Other hand. And here's where it gets even more controversial. We've all done it at some point, maybe not intentionally, but we've all let our own insecurities slip out in the form of a compliment, one that's meant to subtly remind someone of their place. But here's the deep truth, you don't have to accept this disguised hostility. You have the power to reject it, to see it for what it truly is, a reflection of their own insecurities, not a measure of your worth. When someone tells you, "You're smarter than you look," or, "This is good, considering you're new at this," you don't have to just swallow it. Call it out for what it is, even if it makes things awkward. Because if you don't, you're allowing them to dictate how you see yourself, and that's a power you should never hand over to anyone. I've learned to recognize these backhanded compliments for what they are, a mirror reflecting someone else's insecurities. And when you see them this way, they lose their sting. Instead of internalizing it, you can almost laugh it off, because at the end of the day, their words are more about them than about you. Words say more about them than they ever will about you. So here's what I do now. When I receive a backhanded compliment, I don't let it slide. I respond with something like, "Thanks, but what do you mean by that?" It forces them to confront the insult buried in their words, and more often than not, it puts them on the spot. They realize you're not playing their game, and it's incredible how quickly their tune changes. The takeaway here is simple: don't let anyone's veiled negativity define you. Whether it's a well-meaning friend, a jealous colleague, or even a family member, remember this: your worth isn't up for debate. Compliments should lift you up, not tear you down. If someone's words leave you questioning yourself, it's time to question their intentions. Life is too short to waste on people who can't genuinely celebrate your successes. Surround yourself with those who see your value and aren't afraid to let you know it, without any strings attached. And here's another sign: they subtly exclude you from plans. It's the little things that sting the most, like realizing your so-called friends accidentally forgot to invite you to that dinner, that party, or that weekend getaway. They'll swear it was just an oversight, or that it was a last-minute thing. Even worse, they might assume you were too busy anyway. But let's be real, these aren't accidents. This is social exclusion in its sneakiest form, and it's a clear sign that you're not as valued as you think. I've been on the receiving end of this far too many times. I remember one weekend checking my phone and seeing pictures of a group of friends having a blast at an event I would have loved to attend. The kicker? Not a single person mentioned it to me beforehand. When I casually brought it up later, they were full of excuses. "Oh, we thought you were busy," or "it was such a last-minute thing." But deep down, I knew the truth. If they truly wanted me there, they would have made sure I knew about it. And here's where the controversy comes in. This kind of exclusion isn't just thoughtlessness, it's a deliberate act. It's a way for people to subtly push you out of their inner circle, without ever having to say it directly. It's a silent message that you're not a priority, and that can be even more painful than an outright rejection. The real question is, how long are you going to tolerate being an afterthought? It's deliberate. It's a way of sending a message without saying a word. They don't want you there, but they don't have the guts to tell you to your face. Instead, they hope you'll just fade out of the group quietly, without causing a scene. It's passive-aggressive and cowardly, but it's also incredibly common. People don't talk about this much because it's easier to pretend it's not happening. It's easier to swallow the excuses and convince yourself that it was just a mistake, rather than face the painful truth that you're being pushed out. But here's the thing: if you keep accepting those excuses, you're giving them permission to keep excluding you. You're letting them decide your place in their lives, instead of taking control of your own narrative. I had to learn this the hard way. For a while, I stayed quiet, letting those accidental exclusions slide, hoping that maybe next time, I'd be included. But then I realized that by staying silent, I was allowing myself to be treated like an afterthought. I was letting them define my worth in their circle. And that's a power I wasn't willing to give up anymore. Afterthought. So, I did something controversial. I started calling them out on it. I'd say, "Hey, I saw you guys went out last weekend. Why didn't anyone invite me?" It wasn't easy, and it definitely made things awkward, but it forced them to confront their behavior. And guess what? The dynamics shifted. Some people got defensive, others tried to make up for it, but the bottom line was clear: I wasn't going to let them exclude me without a fight. Here's the deep message: if people want you in their lives, they'll make the effort to include you, no matter how last minute the plan is. And if they don't, then it's time to seriously reconsider the value of those relationships. You deserve to be around people who don't make you feel like you're constantly chasing their approval or attention. True friends don't forget to invite you, they make sure you're there because they genuinely enjoy your company. So if you find yourself being subtly excluded from plans, don't just brush it off. Confront it. Ask the hard questions, and be prepared to stand up for yourself. You have every right to be part of the group, and if they don't recognize that, it's time to find those who will. Prepared for the answers, even if they're not what you want to hear, because at the end of the day, it's better to know where you truly stand than to be left wondering why you were left out again. And remember, you're not a backup option. You're a priority. Surround yourself with people who treat you like one. Now let's talk about another sign: they're busy, only when it comes to you. We've all heard it before: "I'm so busy these days, sorry I can't hang out." It's the perfect excuse, right? After all, who isn't busy? But what happens when you start noticing a pattern? They're always available for others, posting pictures of their outings, catching up with mutual friends, but when it comes to you, suddenly, they're swamped. Here's the cold, hard truth: they're not too busy, they're just too busy for you. I've been in that frustrating situation more times than I care to admit. I remember reaching out to a friend I used to be close with, trying to set up a time to catch up. Every time I suggested something, they'd have an excuse: "I'm working late, I've got a lot on my plate, maybe next week." Meanwhile, their social media was filled with pictures of their plans with everyone else but me. It didn't take long to realize the painful truth: I wasn't a priority anymore. I'd see them hanging out with other people, having a great time, somehow always finding a way to make time for everyone except me. It took me longer than I'd like to admit to see the pattern. The message they were sending was loud and clear: I wasn't a priority in their life anymore. Here's where it gets controversial. We've been conditioned to accept busy as a valid excuse for being pushed aside. But let's be honest with ourselves: people make time for what and who they care about. If they're constantly too busy when it comes to you, it's not about their schedule, it's about their priorities. And that's a hard pill to swallow because it forces you to confront the painful reality that you might not be as important to them as they are to you. The harsh reality is that busy is often just a polite way of saying, "I don't want to spend time with you." It's easier for them to blame it on their schedule than to admit they're actively choosing not to include you in their life. It's a passive-aggressive way of keeping you at arm's length without having to deal with the discomfort of an honest conversation. The confrontation that would come with telling you the truth. They want to keep you on the hook just in case, without actually investing in the relationship. I've been on both sides of this. There were times when I was the one making excuses because I didn't know how to tell someone that I had outgrown the friendship. But being on the receiving end of this taught me a valuable lesson. It's better to be honest, even if it's uncomfortable, than to string someone along with excuses. When I finally called out my friend for always being too busy, the conversation was awkward, but it was necessary. It gave me the clarity I needed to move on and invest my time and energy in relationships where I was truly valued. And here's the deep message: your time is precious, and so is your energy. Don't waste it on people who can't be bothered to make time for you. If someone is constantly too busy for you, it's time to reassess the relationship. You deserve to be around people who are excited to see you, who genuinely want to spend time with you, and who make the effort to prioritize you just as much as you prioritize them. Don't settle for anything less. Make an effort to include you in their lives, not just when it's convenient for them, but because they genuinely enjoy your company. It's important to recognize that people change, and so do relationships. Sometimes, we hold on to people out of habit, nostalgia, or fear of being alone, even when they've clearly moved on. But there's strength in letting go. In acknowledging that you deserve more than someone's leftover time. It's not about being needy or demanding, it's about valuing yourself enough to walk away from those who don't value you. Now, let's address another sign: they avoid physical contact like the plague. Let's talk about the elephant in the room: physical contact, or rather, the lack of it. We're not just talking about romantic relationships here. Physical contact is a basic human interaction, a way of connecting and building trust. So, what does it mean when someone goes out of their way to avoid even the most casual touch? The answer isn't pretty. When someone consistently avoids physical contact, it can indicate that they're emotionally distant, uninterested, or uncomfortable with being close to you. It's not about personal space, it's about a subtle message that they don't want to engage with you on a deeper level. They're keeping their distance, literally and figuratively, because they don't feel a connection strong enough to close that gap. They're sending a clear signal that they're uncomfortable around you, and it's time to pay attention. I once had a colleague who seemed to recoil every time I reached out for a handshake or a friendly pat on the back. At first, I thought I was imagining things, but then I noticed it wasn't just me. They were warm and tactile with everyone else, but when it came to me, it was like I had the plague. It didn't take long for me to realize that their avoidance of physical contact was more than just a quirk, it was a deliberate effort to keep me at a distance. Here's the controversial part: physical contact is a natural part of human interaction, and when someone consistently avoids it, they're communicating a lack of comfort or connection. Sure, some people just aren't touchy-feely, and that's fine. But when it's selective, when they're hugging others but stiffening up around you, it's a red flag that something's off. They might not dislike you enough to say it outright, but their body language is doing all the talking. It's not just about being touchy, it's about the emotional distance they're creating between you. The message is clear. They don't feel the connection or trust needed to engage with you in a physical way. And that, my friend, speaks volumes. Let's be honest, we've all been there, on both sides of the equation. Maybe you've avoided a handshake or leaned back when someone got too close because you just weren't feeling the vibe. Or maybe you've been on the receiving end, wondering why someone always seems to flinch when you're around. It's uncomfortable, awkward, and often a sign that the relationship isn't as strong as you'd like to think. But here's the deeper truth: physical contact is a fundamental part of human connection. It's how we show trust, warmth, and empathy. When someone avoids it with you, they're not just avoiding touch, they're avoiding closeness, intimacy, and vulnerability. They're keeping you at arm's length, literally and figuratively. And that's a clear indication that there's an underlying issue in the relationship. I've learned to pay attention to these cues, even when it's hard to admit what they mean. There was a time when I ignored the signs, convincing myself that someone's reluctance to get close was just a personality trait. But the more I noticed the pattern, the clearer it became. Avoiding physical contact wasn't just a preference, it was a silent barrier they were putting between us. It wasn't just about space, it was about a lack of connection, and ultimately, a lack of trust or interest in getting closer. You find yourself constantly being avoided or distanced in this way, it's crucial to address it head-on. The more I reflected on these moments, the more I realized that the issue wasn't just about personal preference, it was about how the other person felt about the relationship, and about me. When I finally confronted the situation, it led to some tough conversations, and in some cases, the end of the relationship. But it also freed me from the frustration of always wondering why things felt off. So here's the deep message: don't ignore the signs when someone avoids physical contact with you. It's more than just a quirk or preference, it's a statement about their comfort level and the connection they're willing to share with you. If you notice this pattern, don't be afraid to address it. It might lead to a deeper understanding, or it might reveal that the relationship isn't as solid as you thought. Either way, it's better to confront the truth than to live in denial. You deserve relationships where physical contact is something natural, not something that's avoided. Whether it's a friendly hug, a handshake, or simply sitting close without feeling awkward, these small gestures build trust and connection. And that's something that shouldn't be in question. I thought were my closest friends for support. But when I reached out, they were nowhere to be found. I was left standing alone, struggling with a weight that felt impossible to carry by myself. At first, I thought maybe they were just busy or dealing with their own things. But as days turned into weeks, the silence was deafening. It wasn't just the absence of physical presence, it was the emotional distance that stung the most. Here's the cold, hard truth: when someone disappears on you during your hardest moments, it's not just a sign of being flaky, it's a clear indication that they aren't truly invested in you. They might have been there for the good times, the easy laughs, and the fun moments, but when the real test came, they were nowhere to be found. It's a betrayal, plain and simple. They might not mean it intentionally, but the result is the same: they aren't showing up when you need them most. I learned this lesson the hard way. There was a time when I was going through one of the toughest times of my life, facing personal struggles that felt like they might break me. I reached out to what I thought were my closest friends, hoping for support, for someone to just be there. And what did I get? Silence. The controversy here is that we often tend to give people the benefit of the doubt, thinking maybe they're just busy, or maybe they didn't know how to respond. But here's the truth: true friends don't disappear when you need them. They show up, even if it's just to listen, even if they don't have all the answers. The real ones are there, in the trenches, ready to offer a hand, a word of comfort, or even just their presence. If someone vanishes when you're struggling, it's time to take a long, hard look at the relationship. Do they really care, or were they just there for the good times? Don't let yourself be the person who only gets attention when things are easy. You deserve support from people who are there when it counts, not just when it's convenient for them. Don't be afraid to ask the tough questions and, if necessary, make the tough decisions. Life is too short to surround yourself with people who can't show up when it matters. The most are often the ones who only show up when it's easy, when everything's going smoothly, when it doesn't require any emotional labor or real effort. They might tell you that they've got your back, but their actions speak louder than their words. And when you're at your lowest, you see just how hollow those promises really are. The controversial part is this: we often expect people to act in ways that reflect the friendship or support they claim to offer, but the reality is that many are only interested in being part of the good times, the fun, the celebrations, the moments of joy. But the moment you face hardship, they disappear. It's uncomfortable for them, and often they don't want to deal with the rawness or emotional intensity of your situation. It's easier for them to act busy or to pretend they didn't notice that you need them. Here's the deeper truth: true friends show up when it's difficult. They don't just check in when it's convenient for them, they make the effort when you're hurting. Support isn't about words, it's about presence. It's about making the choice to stand by someone even when it's inconvenient or uncomfortable. And while people may claim to be there for you, you only truly know their character when the going gets tough. If they vanish when you need them, it's not just a missed opportunity, it's a stark reflection of how much they value the relationship. I've learned the hard way that these moments reveal so much about a person. Sometimes, it's painful, but it's necessary. It gives you the clarity you need to reassess who truly cares for you and who is just around for the ride. And here's the key takeaway: don't settle for relationships where you're the one constantly giving and never receiving. You deserve to be surrounded by people who don't just show up for the highs, but who stand by you during the lows. If they're only around when it's easy, it's time to reconsider their place in your life. Life's too short to invest in relationships that don't offer genuine, unwavering support when you need it the most. Deserve your time and energy. The absence of support in times of crisis is a clear sign that those relationships were never as strong or genuine as you thought. It's a painful lesson, but it's also a necessary one. Once you realize this, you can stop pouring yourself into connections that only serve you in the good times, and start investing in the people who prove their loyalty and care when it matters most. The truth is, we all go through tough times, and during those moments, we need people who can show up, not just with words, but with actions. If someone disappears when you're struggling, they're revealing a lot about their priorities, and it's not about you. It's about them being unwilling or unable to deal with discomfort, vulnerability, or emotional responsibility. But here's the deeper lesson: the people who stand by you, who show up for you when things get hard, are the ones who truly value you. They're the ones who help you see that, even when life feels like it's falling apart, you're not alone. And when those people show up, cherish them, because they are rare. They're the ones who will truly lift you up, not just in moments of joy, but when you're at your lowest. So, take this lesson and use it to guide you. Don't chase people who aren't willing to invest in your life in meaningful ways. Let the people who disappear show you where they stand, and use that clarity to find those who will be there for you when the chips are down. Gossip is a betrayal disguised as casual conversation. When someone talks behind your back, it's not just about sharing information, it's about diminishing your reputation, eroding trust, and undermining your sense of security within the relationship. Even if the words seem harmless, even if they come with a laugh or an "I'm just venting" excuse, the intention is to separate you from others or to create doubt and suspicion about you. It's a silent attack on your character. I've experienced this firsthand, when a so-called friend would gossip about me, making snide comments or sharing personal details I'd confided in them. At first, I tried to brush it off, thinking they didn't mean any harm. But over time, I realized that it wasn't just idle chatter. Their words created division, made people question me, and often led to awkward moments and strained relationships. It wasn't just about what was said, it was about how it made me feel, betrayed, isolated, and disrespected. Here's the hard truth. When someone gossips about you behind your back, they're revealing their own insecurities, jealousy, or desire to control the narrative. It's not about you, it's about their need to diminish you in order to feel better about themselves or to strengthen their position with others. And while gossip may seem like an easy way to bond or pass time, it's toxic and ultimately destructive. But here's where it gets even more controversial. We all do it, sometimes without realizing how harmful it can be. We've all whispered about someone or shared something we shouldn't have. Maybe it was a moment of weakness or frustration, but it's a dangerous habit that can erode trust and destroy relationships. When you recognize this pattern in yourself or others, it's time to stop. If someone gossips about others to you, they will likely gossip about you to others. It's a cycle that's built on secrecy and dishonesty. So, here's the advice. If you find out someone is gossiping about you, confront it. Ask them directly, and don't let them wiggle out of it with vague apologies. It may not be easy, but addressing it head-on shows that you won't tolerate betrayal, and it can serve as a wake-up call for them to respect your boundaries and your privacy. It may even force them to examine their behavior. More importantly, if you discover that someone is gossiping about you, take it as a sign of their true character. True friends don't tear each other down, they build each other up, even when they're not in the room. If someone can't say something to your face, or if they're sharing personal information without your consent, it's a sign that they don't deserve your trust or your energy. Protect yourself from people who thrive on drama and negativity. Surround yourself with individuals who uplift you, who respect your privacy, and who have the integrity to speak with you directly if there's an issue. Your time and energy are valuable, and they should be spent on relationships that are rooted in trust, respect, and mutual support, not in the toxic cycle of gossip. Gossip is a form of manipulation, a way for someone to assert control or dominance over you while hiding behind a veil of casual conversation. When someone shares your private struggles, especially in an exaggerated or twisted way, It's not just about sharing information, it's about diminishing you. They want to feel better about themselves by putting you in a position where you're vulnerable, exposing your weaknesses for others to scrutinize. It's not just thoughtless chatter, it's intentional. I've had the unfortunate experience of being the subject of gossip, and I can tell you, it's soul-crushing. When you trust someone with your secrets or personal challenges, you're not just sharing information, you're trusting them with a piece of your heart, your vulnerability. To have that trust shattered so easily, when they take your pain and turn it into a form of entertainment or gossip, feels like a betrayal of the highest order. And let's be clear, this isn't just about one isolated incident. Gossip becomes a pattern. Once someone feels comfortable gossiping about you, they'll likely do it again, to other people. It creates a toxic atmosphere where trust is eroded, and relationships are built on false narratives rather than honesty and support. Here's the controversial truth: gossip isn't just about venting. It's a power play. People who gossip about you are often insecure, using your flaws and personal struggles to make themselves feel superior. They don't want to engage with you directly about the issue. It's much easier for them to tear you down behind your back, where you can't defend yourself. They're avoiding confrontation while still making sure you're seen in a negative light. It's cowardly, and it's designed to manipulate the way others see you. So, what do you do when this happens? First, acknowledge the situation for what it is. It's not about you, it's about them. When someone gossips about you, they're revealing their own insecurities, not your flaws. They're showing you that they don't respect you, and possibly never did. If you can, confront the person. I know it's uncomfortable, but it's the best way to take back control. Ask them directly why they felt the need to spread your private matters, and hold them accountable for their actions. It's important to set boundaries and let people know that you won't tolerate your trust being violated in such a hurtful way. This might be the wake-up call they need, or it might expose a relationship that was never as strong as you thought. Here's the deep message: respect is the foundation of any relationship. If someone gossips about you, it's a clear sign that they don't value you. And if you allow them to continue doing so without addressing it, you're giving them permission to treat you this way. Protect your reputation and your emotional well-being by distancing yourself from those who thrive on drama and negativity. Your energy should be spent on people who respect you, who support you, and who would never think of betraying your trust. Person doing the gossiping than it does about you. When someone gossips about you, it's not just about passing along information, it's a deliberate choice to undermine your reputation and your trust. It's a reflection of their character, or rather, the lack of it. They're revealing that they don't value you enough to protect your dignity or your privacy. Instead, they're willing to tarnish your image for their own amusement or to make themselves feel superior. It's easy for the gossiper to minimize it, to make it seem like no big deal, but the reality is that their words can cause real harm. They create rifts in relationships, distort perceptions, and make you doubt who you can truly trust. In my case, when I confronted the friend who gossiped about me, expecting an apology or even some remorse, I was met with defensiveness and dismissal. They brushed it off like it was just innocent chatter, but it wasn't. It was deliberate. It was personal. And it hurt. Here's the ugly truth. People who gossip to you aren't just spreading information, they're setting the stage for betrayal. They're planting seeds of doubt about you, often in the guise of just venting or just talking. But when you're not around, they're probably doing the same thing to you, repeating your secrets, distorting your actions, and painting you in a negative light. Gossip is like a disease. It spreads, it poisons, and it destroys the foundation of any meaningful connection. And once that trust is broken, it's incredibly hard to rebuild. People who gossip aren't the kind of friends you want in your life. They don't respect you, and they don't have your best interests at heart. They're more interested in drama, in making others feel less than, and in keeping things stirred up for their own benefit. The deep message here is clear: protect your energy and your peace. If you know someone who gossips about others, chances are they're doing the same to you when you're not around. It's not just harmless chatter, it's a betrayal of your trust, your privacy, and your worth. Confront them. Don't let it slide. And don't let these toxic people stay in your life. True friends don't gossip, they have your back. So, choose your inner circle wisely. The ones who gossip are not the ones who will truly stand by you when it matters most. Exactly. Gossip always reflects more about the person spreading it than the person it's about. When someone gossips, they're not just passing along information, they're revealing their own insecurities, their need to feel superior, or their lack of integrity. Instead of lifting others up or minding their own business, they choose to tear down, spread negativity, and create division. Gossip is often about making the gossiper feel more powerful or important by elevating themselves at the expense of someone else's reputation. In many cases, they may not even realize that they're doing more harm to themselves than to the person they're talking about. Because people who engage in gossip are seen as untrustworthy, others will start questioning their motives, their honesty, and their character. The truth is, the person being gossiped about is usually the one left to pick up the pieces of their reputation, while the gossiper might go on without facing any consequences. But over time, that kind of behavior catches up with them. People begin to see them for what they really are: manipulative, disrespectful, and unreliable. So, as hard as it may be to hear, remember that when someone is gossiping about you, it's not a reflection of your worth. It's a sign of the weakness and lack of integrity in the person doing the gossiping. And that's where the power lies, by choosing not to internalize their negativity and instead focusing on the truth of who you are.